Hello, hello, this is Pattyjo, and we are getting ready to hear Durhell cross-examine the officer at the other end of the parade route. So this should be fairly epic. Let's make this big so we can see what's going on.
You stated initially that you had heard some radio calls about a possible altercation at Frame Park.
That is correct.
Yeah, the scene of your first crime.
Do you recall what the initial report of that was?
My recollection of that was that there was a call for service. It was either a domestic or some sort of physical altercation along the riverfront in Frame Park, and that there was a male with armed with a knife, and that he was fleeing from the area.
So it was reported it was a possible knife involved, and there was a male running from the scene?
That is correct.
And were you ever given any further information about the male with the knife that was running from the scene?
No.
Any information that the male with a knife running from the scene was in a vehicle at any time?
No.
Do you know if any investigation was done looking into that supposed fight at the park?
Yes.
And what did you learn?
I did not learn anything of it. I just know that squads were responding there to investigate it. I was not updated on their findings or what they had investigated. I just know that they were dispatched there for that investigation.
Do you recall if there was ever a knife recovered or a suspect recovered in that supposed incident?
Do you mean like how much later do I know? Like what I know now?
At any time. Do you know if there was a suspect, I guess I would say, apprehended or anything that was found with a knife, to your knowledge?
To my knowledge, I do not know if the suspect from that incident, which was you, was located with a knife.
You, what do you mean?
You, Darrell Brooks. I know you were the suspect in that incident, and I know you were taken into custody approximately 30 to 40 minutes later. I do not know if you were armed when you were taken into custody.
I'll let the record reflect that I do not identify by that name, nor do I know any individual by that name. I'm here in third party.
The record's noted, although the jury will disregard the comments, they are not evidence in this case. Next question, please.
At the time, you said, did you respond to that incident at the park?
No.
So how can you know who was involved with it if you didn't respond yourself?
Because you stated at any time this investigation took a long time to complete, and from this investigation we determined that you were the suspect in that investigation.
You determined that?
I did not, no.
Okay.
He can't stop from interrupting this guy.
So basically, you just going off what you were told, because you just stated that you didn't make any determination, nor did you investigate it. Would that be fair to say?
That's correct.
You also gave, and when you were asked the question of were there any other officers along the route, or I don't know if that was referring to side exits or anything of that nature, but I recall you stating that you gave an estimate stating that you You weren't sure where other officers were stationed, but you gave an approximate estimate. Would that be fair to say?
That is correct.
And would that have been officers stationed at different cross streets?
That is correct.
Do you know if those cross streets were barricaded?
I know that there were barricades across numerous intersections for the parade route. That's how we shut down traffic in the downtown area for parades.
So pretty much every side street is barricaded.
I can't give you specifics on what streets were barricaded, but yes, the vast majority of streets are barricaded to stop traffic for the parade route.
Can you pull up Exhibit 1 and publish?
The state would please do that. Thank you.
Talks like it's an expectation. They just do it for it. Petulant child. There's grandpa's suit
The jury have you?
covering his face with a
Yes.
mask.
Can you see? Well, I know you can. Can you see the red lines on this map that we're looking at?
Yes,
And what do those red lines constitute?
barricades.
So would it be fair to say that there's a red line at every cross street that we can see on this map? That would be
Do you mean
Start-
along the parade route or the
along
entire map?
along the parade route, starting at East Main Street. There's a red mark. Oh, I didn't mean to put that arrow. Can we clear that? I was trying to put like a little dot. Starting there's a red line there. There's 2 at Buckley.
Hold on, and just so the record is clear, he put a mark at near the intersection of East Main and White Rock Avenue. So from that location to where?
There's 2 at Buckley.
Well, hold on, you're testifying now. You gotta ask a question.
Yeah.
So the jury will disregard that
Are
statement.
there 2 at Buckley?
Yes,
Is there one at Martin Street?
yes,
Is there one at is there 2 at Barstow Street?
yes,
1 at Gaspar,
yes,
1 at North Grand, and 1 at West Broadway.
there's 2 at West Broadway.
Well, it's one is on the closer to where it says North Grand, and one is on the other side of the star right there. This is what I'm referring to.
Okay, yes, there are 2
Can you
right
clear
there.
that?
Clear that.
Please clear
Because
that
I'm not
now.
done
So
testifying.
there's 2 there.
God, what a monster.
There's 2 at Clinton Street. Can you see those 2?
Yes,
There's 1 at Maple Avenue. Can you see that one?
yes,
And there's 1 at right here at West Avenue. Can you see that?
correct, yes.
Durhell is very angry with this man because this man dared to use and employ deadly force as an officer against Durhell. And how dare he do that? I cannot wait for those questions. Let's get to them.
So it would be fair to say that there's pretty much barriers at every single street
talking
from
to him.
White Rock and East Main to West Main and Northwest Avenue.
Yes,
Barricades at all those streets.
yes,
Do you know if there were officers stationed at those barricades?
yes, this map shows, it appears where everyone was for their assignments that day.
So would it be fair to say if someone wanted to exit the parade route, they would essentially be blocked in by the officers and barricades?
No,
There are barricades at these streets we can see. Would that be fair to say?
no.
So it's not fair to say that there's barricades at these streets?
It's fair to say that there's barricades at the streets.
So Essentially, if someone was leaving the parade route, can they just go right through the barricade?
Yes! He's going to say yes. I've said this before. Try to calm down. And I'm going to say it right now. I myself have driven a medic unit through barricades, slowly pushing them out of my way. I have driven up to barricades and waited for an officer to move the barricade for me. I have driven up to the barricade and gotten out myself and moved the barricade. These are not permanent structures. These are not heavy structures. These are temporary reminders. They aren't even, they're not something that prevents you from getting, they're something that is like a stop sign. A stop sign on the side of the road, there's no magic there. Okay? We just all know that when we come to an intersection and that exists, that doesn't stop our car. We stop our car because we know the rule is that we need to look around the intersection. In addition to that, if something is going on, they would put a barricade saying, this isn't someplace you should turn. Maybe there's a water main break. Maybe there's an event. Maybe something else has happened. Maybe they're doing work on the road. I don't know. Maybe there's a detour. These things are not, you can go through detour signs. I have done these things. It's so frustrating. Thank you. I'm finished. Made me feel much better. Now let's hear him say, yes, you could go through the barricades.
Based on the previous videos that we just were shown.
Not based on the previous videos. If someone was leaving the parade route, can they just go down these streets that are barricaded?
Yes.
Can they just drive right out of there?
Yeah.
Yes, the video showed that.
How when it's barricaded?
They drive through them.
As the video were shown earlier, the vehicle went right through the
Hold on,
barricade.
you asked the question, you have to let him answer that. He's giving you the reason. You asked
I'm
him
getting
how.
frustrated.
He's explaining it.
There's plenty of ways to get off the parade route. You can stop after being given lawful orders by officers, and they could have directed you off the parade route in a safe manner. You could have stopped the vehicle at any point, or you could have driven through plastic barricades like you did at Northwest Avenue, where I was located. So yes, you can drive through plastic barricades.
The you refer to as who?
Daryl Brooks, you, the person that's talking.
The you? And how did you come to the conclusion of that name, as you stated that you couldn't see past this building here, which you said is the Wisconsin house? Would that be fair to say?
Well, that's a compound question, so you need to rephrase that, sir.
You state clear this right there.
Please? Is that a please?
I'm sorry. This is so frustrating to me. He is so disrespectful to this person because he is angry. He is angry. He is emotionally questioning this guy. Yes, I am telling you, you can drive through these barricades. They are nothing but reminders, no different from a stop sign that has just been placed in the middle of the road to stop you from going down a road that you may usually be able to go down. Thank you, Coffee Cake 1803. Elvis has left the building. Here we go. Not so dumb. Every time you think DB can't get any dumber, he says something stupid like, doesn't matter, he's an officer of the law. Or it's irrelevant, he had a cell phone. Oh, yeah, the guy had a cell phone. It's irrelevant, he had his cell phone. That's what you're trying to say he's trying to say. Yeah. No. A cell phone is not a safety device. A radio that automatically gets somebody on the line, that's a safety device. Bringing his daughter into a crime scene. Yeah. That's how it works in the real world, at least in DB's imaginary goblin world, maybe. Unless you're arresting him for a crime, then all hell would break loose. Yes! And then he would be, yes, then he would be, hello, yes. All right, I think I've taken enough time. I took a look at some of your comments. That's calmed me down. Now let's hear Darrell be very disrespectful to this man.
Please.
Can you clear this circle and
everybody
arrow
else, look.
right here? That's
Thank you, Madam Clerk.
you stated that from where you were positioned that you couldn't see around that building. Did you say that?
Yes, I did.
So it would be fair to say you also couldn't see what was happening along the parade route on Main Street. Would that be fair to say?
That is correct.
So it would be also fair to say that everything that you knew up until that point came over the radio and you didn't have firsthand knowledge.
That is correct.
Okay.
You also stated that after a few minutes of hearing these, I guess, radio reports, you said after a few minutes, you noticed something was going on. Do you recall from the reports how long this vehicle traveled along the parade route? An estimate of the time that it traveled down the parade route?
I do not know how long the vehicle was on the parade route for. If I had to estimate, I would estimate approximately 1 to 2.5 minutes.
That's a pretty good estimate. Remember that we're talking about between a 1 and a 1.5 mile area just on Main Street. He did come from that other one, if you're counting from that school where in the park where he had the argument and the assault on Erica. If you're counting that in, that would, but this is a matter of moments, and I think the judge, even in her summary of everything, says that the way the state presented, which is totally logical, the way they presented the case, because they have so much evidence, they broke it down part by part by part by part by part. They could have, and this isn't, this is just a totally an option to them, would have been to do a whole situation, which is a lot of sometimes the way I would teach. So you would give the whole of the situation. In other words, this thing happened in X number of seconds / minutes / moments from this point to this point. And this was the result of it. Let's break each part down. Okay, and that would have been another option for presentation that may have answered that question. Again, I have to say, how is that casting any doubt on what you did? How is it proving that it wasn't intentional? By berating this guy, he's not helping his case, I think, is my bottom line.
2 minutes, maybe?
Would you say it's fair to say that that's relatively a short amount of time?
I would agree with that.
So what do you mean by after a few minutes you noticed something was going on?
Because after a few minutes, what I meant by that was the initial call for service at the boat launch, or for that domestic fight in Frame Park. From that time frame, from when squads were responding to there to the time that I had shots fired, that is what I mean by a few minutes. So you have to take into account the time for squads responding to that call.
I don't know police protocol, so just asking.
That's a statement.
Mr. Brooks, please ask your next question.
I'm getting to it.
Right, but
Don't
I
make
have to advise the jury to disregard the comment because it's not testimony.
and it's irrelevant.
And you stated that, well, let's go to
Yeah, go Go ahead. You don't need, do you need that? We're gonna turn it off.
Yeah, you can take that down. Sorry about that.
Yeah, you can take the
All right,
deed.
take it.
I don't need that. I'm too
Uh,
thug.
I believe it's Exhibit 57. Let me pull up Exhibit 57.
Look at him hunched over like an idiot.
Can we bring it to about 16 or 17 seconds? Can you bring it back a little bit? One more second if you could. There. Can you pause it there? Would it be fair to say that those are barricades that are laying in the street there?
Oh my goodness. Okay.
Correct.
Any idea?
Really can't. Okay, so these are the barricades laying in the street. And they are A-framed, kind of like one of those little horse things where you put a little plywood and you like workbench thing on it. Okay, so they're made out of fiberglass and or plastic. They're kind of weighted funny. If it's a windy day, the way they've reported many, many, many times, having it up on the two A's and having it the top be the smallest part is going to catch the wind and knock it over. Leaving it over, it's almost as tall as it would be if it was standing upright, but you know, whatever. Either way, again, these are simply reminders that this street is blocked off for a purpose. Okay? So this little reminder here, which is all it is sitting in the street. Clearly, it's small enough, probably light enough, for a regular car, a small car, a sedan or a hatchback to push her over. Might do a little damage to it, but it could. But a larger car and or an ambulance or a police cruiser that's got the little thing on the front easily could move that without a person.
Why they were not standing up?
Yes, I do.
Yes, I do.
What would be the reason?
It was very windy that day, so when they were standing up how they normally are, they kept on blowing across the street.
It's like I have
So
a
we
crystal
tilted them
ball.
on their sides so they wouldn't get blown across the road, and they would still stay up there and block traffic.
Which means if they could be blown by the wind, they could be knocked over by and driven through by a car. There you go.
They would be able to block traffic by laying down,
Yeah.
Yes, they serve the same purpose.
but they would be able to block traffic by laying down.
I guess I don't understand what your question is here.
Would it be much more easier to see them if they were facing upright than laying down?
I think the height difference between them laying down and being upright is probably quite minuscule, because as you see, the legs that are now up in the air are approximately the same height as what the bar would be if they were standing up how they normally are.
And you come to that conclusion how?
Because I know
Based
that-
on my training experience after deploying barricades on numerous events and working several parades in my work history.
So you would estimate that a barricade facing upright and a barricade laying down would be the same height.
Approximately.
Can you bring it back to 10 seconds? From what we're looking at right now, it's a little hard to see. You can see the vehicle, you can see where you identified you were, but it's a little bit hard to see everything. Would that be fair to say? Because of the the person with the black coat and the gray hoodie and Nike black pants is directly in the middle of the screen? That'd
That's
be fair to
correct.
say it's a little hard to see from this.
Where it is paused now, yes.
Yes, that's what I meant, where it's paused now.
Yes.
It looks like this would be you right here. Would that be fair to say?
That is correct.
It looks like you're firing your weapon right there. Would that be fair to say?
I do not know if I have pulled the trigger yet or not. I don't believe I have.
You were ready to fire at that point.
That's correct.
Do you recall what you were aiming for?
Yes, I do.
Can you state for the record and for the jury?
You, Durhell Brooks.
Again, you make reference to the you and the name. How did you come to that? Seeing as how you just testified to that you couldn't see anything before what you call the Wisconsin house. Would that be fair to say that you testified to that?
That's correct.
And you also stated that you learned additional information later on. Would that be fair to say?
That's correct.
So how could you determine at this time right now where we're looking at that you knew the suspect's name and the driver? Because you keep referring to you and then you saying the name. How did you have that information at this point that's paused right here that we're looking at?
I didn't say at that time I knew your name.
You referred to the name. Did you not?
That's correct.
So how were you able to obtain the information about a name?
After you were arrested.
I did not know your name at the time I shot at you.
Yay! Look at the way he's looking at him. I did not know your name at the time that I shot at you. Very nice. Very nice.
Who's the you you're referring to?
You.
Durhell Brooks.
Again, you say a name that you haven't answered how you came to that information. Were you told this?
Yes.
By whom?
I do not know who told me. Ultimately, I just know that throughout the course of the investigation, your name, you were arrested within 30 or 40 minutes, and you were identified as Durhell Brooks, who was the suspect in this incident.
So you either had to hear that name from either a report that you heard or someone told you. How did you come to the conclusion?
He
of the
doesn't
name?
know.
I'm assuming someone at the police department told me your name.
And you don't recall who that was?
No.
Even though you can cite the name so clearly and identify it and keep stressing it and stressing it, and you don't recall how you learned the information of the name?
Daryl, how can you be so dumb? Okay.
That is correct.
Oh, God.
So is it fair to say that you're just using the name based off what you're told and not what you were aware of?
What are you asking me?
Yeah.
Is it fair to say that you're identifying this name based off of what you told and not what you knew?
I'm saying the name based on the fact that you are now, you were arrested for this incident. You were identified during this incident, and because of that investigation, that is how we know your name.
Would it be fair to say, and obviously you said you've been in law enforcement for 7.5 years, correct?
Correct.
I'm sure you've done a lot of investigations in that 7.5 years. Is that fair to say?
Correct.
So you do understand that during a police investigation, any suspect is innocent until proven guilty. Would that be fair to say?
That's correct.
And so with that knowledge, why are you so eminent about
Eminent?
the name of the suspect that you just
He totally butchered that word. I can't even butcher it the way he did.
testified to not being aware of at the time? That you testified to, in fact, being told.
I'm sorry, I'm confused by your question. Can you say it again?
I think it was clear, but I'll say it again.
Thank you.
Well, I'll say it this way. You testified to not being aware of the suspect's name at the time.
Correct.
You also testified to being told of the name, correct?
Correct.
Correct. I don't know how I came about your name. I would assume it was through the investigation at the police department.
And were you, in fact, part of that investigation?
No, I was not.
No. And let me tell you why. I don't know all of these procedures. I was never a police officer, but I do know police officers who have employed this type of use whenever your firearm is used. An administrative leave is employed. An investigation into the use is always done to make sure that it was justified. They do not take the use of these firearms lightly. And I have a big disagreement over Second Amendment rights and firearm rights with my friend who lives in Wisconsin. He very much, I can't say he's really necessarily against it. He just doesn't see the need or purpose for it. He's a lot more, I don't know, Wisconsin people are so like kind. I personally do own a firearm. I know the Second Amendment is not really built for it being, and I don't want to get too political here, but it's not really built for it being for the purpose of self-defense. It is just like a side effect that it's there. Really, the Second Amendment is to protect yourself from a tyrannical government. Isn't that the way it was originally written? I mean, I'm no constitutionalist, and, you know, I just, what I learned in high school and college, which was, you know, peripheral to my actual degrees. But, you know, that's my understanding. I don't really want to go back on that particular amendment. But as far as the police department is concerned, they take the use of that extremely seriously. And whenever it's done, like I said, a full investigation into the use of it at all is done. You have to report it on the radio. It has to be reported. A supervisor comes out. They take a full report. You're actually put on an administrative or a desk leave where you're not in public until and it could just be a 24-hour thing, or it could be a full investigation. I don't know, but my understanding is that these things are fully investigated.
So it would be fair to say that
So he wouldn't be part
by
of
you
this
using a name, you would not be short. How can you be short?
I'll object.
Grounds.
Argumentative.
It's been asked, it's been answered, it's argumentative.
Yes.
The objection is sustained. Please ask your next question.
Which I object. There's so many reasons I can't even separate them. Let me choose this one. Let me choose this one, because I don't even
When
know.
asked about what you were aiming at when you fired,
Well, there you go.
you didn't give a definitive answer. You were aiming for the driver.
I felt like I gave a pretty definitive answer. My answer was you,
You
Durhell
were aiming
Brooks.
for the driver.
Yes. It's pretty definitive. I identified the person I
So
was shooting at.
what part of the driver's body could you see when the vehicle passed you?
Everything we saw in those pictures.
When the vehicle was approaching me, I could see the silhouette of his face and upper portion of his body.
Now we're going to go into what is a silhouette. He doesn't know what that means.
You describe what you mean by silhouette.
Oh my God.
The
Mostly-
upper portion of a person's body, I would say, from maybe chest, shoulders, and head and face.
You said silhouette though. What is a silhouette?
The outer portions of what would be like your shoulder down, your arms to your chest. The silhouette would be the outer portion of it.
That would be the upper half, not the silhouette. What do you mean by silhouette?
The objection is sustained. It's Mr. Brooks is not asking a question. It was argumentative. The jury can certainly decide what that means, but he's answered the question.
Would it be fair to say that that would be equivalent to a profile?
What do you mean by a profile?
A profile would be sort of like a side angle view. Would it be fair to say that a silhouette would be more of an outline that would be kind of similar to a profile?
I don't know exactly what you're asking here, but I can tell you when the vehicle is driving towards me, I could see your face, and then as the vehicle drove to my right, yes, then I saw the side of your face, and so then, yes, as a vehicle passes you, you see different portions of the driver, I guess you could say.
And so you aim towards what you can see?
Correct.
So that would be the upper part, as you say, you said the shoulder, you made I think it was your left hand pointing to your right shoulder, shoulder and up.
You can't even. I'm so sorry. But Daryl trying to do things the way the other attorneys do them and trying to model it at the same time being so contrary to anything they say. Oh my goodness. Oh God, wait till he gets whinier and whinier as this goes, I bet too.
Silhouette, as you say?
That is what I could see when you were driving at me. You asked me what I could see of you, and that is what I could see of you in the vehicle when you were approaching me.
The question now, though, is that what you aim for?
I was aiming at you, yes.
At what you can see?
I was aiming at you in the driver's seat, yes.
Shoulder, as you pointed to, and up, correct? Would that be fair to say?
Yes.
With my long, stupid fingernails.
Firing a weapon of your caliber, would any of those shots be kill shots?
Yes.
Would it be fair to say that firing a kill shot at anyone would terrify him?
Now we're getting to the nitty-gritty of this. Who cares?
I'm sure being shot at is
Terrifying.
terrifying.
I was shot when I was 16 years old. I was not terrified. I am more scared of what happened now. It's not a sexy story. I'm sorry. Okay, so basically I was a junior counselor for a camp, and one of the little things that we held for the kids was riflery, where we barely used anything but a .22 rifle, and little 10-year-old kids would have their little things, and we'd put them on a mattress, and one person had to walk out and put the targets up and bring the targets back, put the new targets up. And since I was the junior counselor, I was the one to do it. Okay, they didn't. The two people who wanted to do this was the one guy I was doing it with and his friend. But when riflery and archery were the counselors were chosen for the teaching of it. They did it based off of skill level. So we all, as counselors, went, and really it was a little competition, and I was number one, and because I was a crack shot, and my partner was the second best, and his partner and his friend was like fourth or fifth, so it wasn't even the next one up. But they were mad because it was me and this guy. And so, he would make me go get the targets. And what he was supposed to do was make sure that all the kids were sitting on the bench away from the little rifles. And they were just little tiny rifles. And he wasn't. He was talking to his friend anyway, who wasn't supposed to be there. It was supposed to be very controlled setting. And so I walked out to do my job. They were talking and not looking at what was going on. One of the kids went back to the thing and shot me, basically. So, was I terrified? No, I didn't even know it was coming. He shot me from the back. Was I hurt badly? No, I was not hurt badly.
Yes, it is.
It hurts.
So it'd be fair to say you were shooting to kill.
No.
No.
So would it be fair to say that, judging based on what you see that you testified to, a silhouette from about here that you pointed to, from the shoulder, using your left hand, you pointed at your right shoulder from here up, and you just acknowledged that any one of those 3 shots could have been kill shots.
Yes.
Would it be fair to say that you were aiming to kill?
No.
Shooting to kill, rather. Not aiming to kill, but shooting to kill.
No.
So, in your estimate, what do you think you would have hit if you just testified to saying that you aimed at the driver? What were you estimating to hit?
The driver.
Well, my intention was to shoot you in the upper portion of the body. However, my intention was not to kill you. My intention was to stop the threat that you were posing to everyone in the downtown area at the Christmas parade.
That's all this needs. Thank you.
Keep referring to the you again. Well, that's not a question. So,
You, who is you? Like
by
that
your
movie.
estimation, acknowledging that those were kill shots, if you connected with any of those shots, is it possible the driver could have been killed?
Yes.
And would it be fair to say that that's deadly force?
Yes.
Do you think it would have been possible to aim at the tire of the vehicle?
No.
Why not? Would shooting the tire of the vehicle not stop the vehicle?
Nope.
No, it would not.
The tire doesn't drive the vehicle. The driver drives the vehicle. Yes, you can drive on a flat tire.
I have.
So a blown tire would, to your estimation, a blown tire would not stop a vehicle from moving?
No, it will not.
So it'll just keep on. It won't even slow down?
That is correct. I'm trained to stop the threat. You were the threat. The vehicle was not. The vehicle was the weapon which you used.
Thank you, Officer Bryce. I can't remember your last name, Officer Bryce. Thank you. He was the threat. This is what makes me so angry about the person who hurt me and this person who hurt all of those people. He keeps the tragedy of the day. He goes into that later on, that it was tragedy and that's not lost on him. No, you did this. Darrell Brooks did this. The person who hurt me, he did the same thing. I'm sorry that happened to you. No, it didn't happen to me. You did it to me. Nothing happened to me. You punched me in the face a whole bunch of times. That's what happened. But they can't ever take responsibility. There's one thing I've always taught my kids. I don't care what the other one did. Are you sorry? I'm not talking to the other one. I'm talking to this one. And then I'll talk to that one. Apologies don't come with a but.
That is why I shot at you.
There's the you again.
You.
Pretty criminal.
So slick.
Could you have, well, you testify that you're trying to stop the threat. And so, would it be fair to say that that training constitutes shooting kill shots?
Well, we are trained in deadly force, and when we are presented with a deadly force incident, yes, we have to sometimes make that difficult decision and use deadly force.
Have you ever used deadly force before that incident?
Objection.
Grounds.
Sustained.
He's trying to make it so this guy did something wrong, and even though what he did was a very high-end thing, I don't think anybody could say that it was wrong what he chose. I used to tell the paramedics this: whenever you're facing a decision, there's either a right answer or a wrong answer. You're either going to be right or wrong, and the statistics are always going to be 50-50. You cannot stack the deck. You cannot stack that deck. You have to go with one and do it. Could be wrong. Could be wrong. Half the time you will be. The only really wrong thing to do is nothing. So he would have had to choose something to do, and he had choices, and he chose this. But you're not gonna make what he did wrong, based, especially Durhell. How does he have the absolute unmitigated gall?
You said you're trained to use deadly force.
Stomping through.
So would it be fair to say that anytime you shoot your weapon, it would be deadly force?
When it is directed at a person, yes.
Were you injured in any way during the incident?
No, I was not.
Thank you for asking.
And at the time, being where you were positioned at, you've already testified that you could not see what was going on during the parade route from your position. So, why did you feel the need at the time, not knowing the full extent of what was happening, to use deadly force?
Based on his training.
Because as I previously stated, based on the fact that the radio traffic for people screaming for ambulances, and as different officers were getting on the radio, and it was progressively moving further and further westbound towards me on the parade route, that, and then officers saying someone was hit, which I initially thought was a physical altercation, someone being hit, but it was a vehicle versus person hit. Based on that, the vehicle speed at which, yes, I could not see it down Main Street. I only had a couple seconds at most until the vehicle from where I saw it was to my location. So based on the amount of vehicle damage, I knew the vehicle had been striking pedestrians in the roadway, and because of that, that's a deadly force incident. So that is why I deployed deadly force.
So you said you knew what the vehicle had. You knew. You said it multiple times. You knew.
Yes.
How could you know if you could not see around the position that you were?
Because everybody was reporting it. Vehicles striking people, Everybody was reporting it. And quite frankly, some of those radio reports that we have heard, very few of them. And in my line of, we are taught you don't scream on the radio. There's no reason. You're in a fire. You walking into a fire. You're not screaming. That is a panic situation for most people. But there's no need to scream. This is normal for you in a normal day. And the police are probably taught the same thing. The fact that it did elevate to that had to spark like the highest amount of adrenaline in everybody who was listening. When I started screaming on the radio when I was getting hurt, I know that people way more experienced than me, everybody heard it. Everybody heard it. And a friend of mine drove from I think she broke the laws of physics to get to the hospital where I was. She made it there before the police.
Were positioned in. How do you know that?
Positioned.
Because based on the speed of a vehicle on a closed roadway during a parade, and people running out of the way so they did not get run over right in front of me, between all of those things, I knew what had just happened, and that is why I had to take action.
And you knew based on the radio reports?
Yes.
I would say everything that I had just previously described, all of that encompassing.
And
Yes,
what do you
that
saw
led up to my
you?
decision making into yes, now I knew what had happened. I did not know previous to that what was going on. I did not know there was a vehicle on the roadway until I saw it. And it all made sense when I put everything together.
When
He quickly put everything together.
you saw it, by the time you saw it, as you said, it was a couple of seconds. So at that point, did you observe the vehicle strike anyone from the time that you saw it?
No, I did not. I was focused on the vehicle, so I just remember that there were a ton of little kids and adults on the sidewalks. I knew there were a lot of children right in the roadway right there. And I remember seeing people like running, but I wasn't really paying attention to the people. I was just focused on the vehicle. So it was really all I was focused on at that point.
You weren't paying attention to any other people.
No,
That was
not
not
what
my
he said.
primary focus.
But that's not what he said either.
But you do recall that no one was struck from the time you saw the vehicle.
Yes, after looking back, after videos later on throughout the investigation.
No. From which you saw, from which you observed with your own eyes.
Yes, Daryl. He chose to use deadly force against you particularly based on hearing the radio reports, hearing that people were being injured, the calls for help, the calls for ambulances, and then seeing your completely wrecked SUV with you stomping through unsupervised the way you have been all your life. Nobody ever saying, no, you can't do this. Or even if they did, you didn't listen because you think that you can just do anything you want because you're such a narcissistic pig. He then took it upon himself to be a hero to the people around, even taking a less optimal shot to ensure the safety of more of those people. You are such trash, Daryl.
No, I can't recall ever seeing someone hit right in front of me. No, I do not recall that.
Does the exhibit videos that you saw here today, does anyone get struck in those videos that you saw today?
So why'd you shoot me?
No, not that I saw today.
Baby.
And you still made the decision to shoot to kill?
Yes.
That's correct.
To use deadly force. Yes. He still wanted to shoot at you to stop you from doing what you were doing because he had already come to the conclusion, the correct one, by the way, even with the limited information that he had, which wasn't that limited, but limited enough, as you're pointing out. You can, and based on what you've done, how dare you say anything he was doing was wrong?
Actually, correction, I shot to stop the threat. If ultimately you would have been killed from that, that is a possible outcome.
But you did testify that there were kill shots, did you not?
Potentially.
Sustained. It's also been asked and answered in multiple ways. At
Do
this
you
point.
recall what your shots hit, if anything?
Yes, later on throughout the investigation when I did.
This is where we're going to find that this is a post-traumatic stress for the officer.
At the time, not later on. At the time where you fired the shots.
Mr. Brooks, you asked a question. He was attempting to answer it, so you have to
I
let.
was trying to give him clarification on what I
But
mean.
you have to let him answer the question that you asked, and if you feel the need for follow-up, then you can do that, or ask a very specific question. But I'm allowing him to answer. He was interrupted. Go ahead.
I believe it was 3 days after the incident. That is when I gave my voluntary statement to Detective Kirby and Detective Casey, and upon completion of that statement, I asked them if they could share any information with me, and during that conversation I was shown a picture of the vehicle and where my round struck the vehicle.
You stated you asked them for any additional information that they could give you. So it would be fair to say at that time you still didn't have a lot of information. Would it be fair to say that?
That is correct. I didn't know where my rounds had struck previous to that.
Did you ask them in the statement that you just testified to, saying you asked them if they could provide you with any more information? Did you at any time specifically ask about the shots that you fired when you requested if they could give you any more information?
I do not remember the specifics of what questions I asked in pertaining to what information they could share with me. I think it was sort of a generalization of what can you share with me at this point.
So would it be fair to say at that point that there's a possibility that you did not know the name of the suspect, nor did you know if you had shot the suspect at that time?
At that time, I knew I had not shot the suspect, because the night of the incident, when he was taken into custody, it was relayed to me that he was uninjured and he had not been struck by any of my rounds that were fired.
It is highly likely, I guess, that an officer who uses deadly force in that, first of all, if it's just like in the case of the young boy who I took care of that day, when he, a couple of days later, brandished the pew-pew and deadly force was used, it was probably pretty obvious at the time because Durhell was driving away. It's hard to know where the shots were, and he would have had to have been told. But again, there would have been a completely, routine and separate investigation into that particular thing to make sure that, what he did and how he is saying it is he used it and decided to use it appropriately, that he wasn't just brandishing his firearm where it shouldn't be used. I guess another example is that stop. I don't remember where it was, where I think the person didn't survive, where the officer claimed that she thought she was using her taser, but it was her firearm. And actually, my friend and I, Jay and I, disagreed on that one too, because he was like, well, it was just a mistake. And I was like, oh, no. I don't agree. They are highly trained. They should have known very much the difference between one piece of equipment and the other piece of equipment. One is much heavier. One should be on one side of your mouth, the other side of your, whatever it takes to keep, the public safe. I mean, isn't that the whole point?
You do recall just testifying to requesting more information from the detectives when you had the conversation with them. Is that correct?
That is correct.
and you said that you don't recall asking them about if your bullet struck someone. Is that correct?
That is correct. So the day I met with Detective Kirby and Detective Casey, that was, I believe, 2 or 3 days after the incident,
So it was common knowledge.
Mr. Brooks was taken into custody the night of. So when I was still at the police department, I knew that he had not been struck. So I think we're dealing with the questions I asked of the detectives. That was not the same night of the incident.
And let's just point out irony, pot meat kettle. You didn't stop to ask about any of your victims. Okay, any of the people that you used your inappropriate deadly force stomping through unsupervised. At least this guy had a semblance of a hierarchy to answer to when he decides to use this type of force. You just stomped through doing whatever you wanted to do completely unsupervised, like the goblin that you are.
I'm sure you asked. You didn't say it, but you said you don't recall the information that you requested. Would that be fair to say?
No, I don't recall specifically what questions I asked I don't know specifically what questions I asked of them a year ago. I know it was a generalized, what information can you share with me at this point, because I didn't know what was going on in the investigation or what leads they had or essentially what had happened after my involvement, I guess.
So you didn't. It would be fair to say there was a lot of information that you still was unsure about at that point. Would that be fair to say?
That's correct.
So if there was information that you're acknowledging that you had no knowledge of, which would be essentially the reason why you would ask if they can volunteer more information to you, then how would there be any way of knowing if you struck the suspect?
Objection.
Grounds.
What?
Sustained. It's a compound, confusing question. Please rephrase.
It's also stupid and completely self-serving. Like, did you see the look on Zach Witchnell's face? Like, what in the actual boobalooba are you talking about? What kind of mental gymnastics does it take to twist every question to be about your narcissistic self? Jeez.
And I also think it mischaracterizes the testimony.
Exhausting.
And you said you made a statement during your testimony that you had learned that the suspect was not injured.
Yes.
Do you recall who you learned that information from?
Except for that lie you said
I
about
believe
his shoulder.
when I was back at the police department after the incident, so after using deadly force, you're ultimately removed from the scene. When I was at the police department, I was with a support officer and another detective, and at that point, I was still answering questions for investigating officers for what I saw, what I knew, what I saw in the vehicle, and I believe Detective Stern was at our substation with Durhell Brooks after taking him into custody, and I was shown a photo at that point, and I know I had asked if he sustained any injuries or if anyone else had sustained any injuries from my use of force, and at that point I was not told that anyone had been struck by my gunfire.
So you
actually did ask about you, stupid.
just said you asked if the suspect or if anyone else was struck by the gunfire.
That is correct.
So you weren't sure at that point? You weren't
No,
sure?
I was not certain at that point. I can't describe it any more than it was just pure chaos, and at that point I did not know if anyone else was injured from my rounds, or up until I was confirmed that you were not injured. At that point, no, I did not know if anyone was hurt until I was told that.
So would it be fair to say that, and as you just stated, you were unsure if the suspect or anyone else was injured? Would it be fair to say that there was a possibility because you did not know for certain?
Objection. Ask
Grounds.
Sustain.
Grounds for the sustain, Your Honor.
Asked and answered. Next question.
Horns. Demon.
After the vehicle passed you, did you observe it strike anyone?
I did not observe it strike anyone after it passed me.
Do you recall who you, well, I think you did. I think you said you gave your report to Officer Kirby. Is that correct?
Detective Kirby, yes.
I'm sorry, Detective. Do you recall telling Detective Kirby that you were unaware of a vehicle on the parade route and you were unaware of people being injured?
Yes, I previously stated that.
So why'd you try to shoot at me? Hey, Pew-Pew, you made me so sad. Oh, dear Brooks, and the whole world revolves around me. Or I think it should. In the Goblin universe.
Were you able to make out a license plates when it
A
from
license
the vehicle
plate?
when it passed you?
I later learned that I must have, but I do not recall that.
Okay, so here's where we come into some evidence of this being traumatic for this gentleman. So as he is firing his weapon, he here you go to voicemail. He is trying not to hit people. He is trying to stop the threat. He's got all of a sudden there's a lot of information like spinning around him, and he's probably calling on his radio because it's probably required, and he's trying to give whatever information, and he does get the license plate or whatever it is that Durhell calls it, license plate number, which doesn't help Durhell in his defense. It just makes it clear that it was him and his vehicle stomping through with his troll goblin troll demon.
So from what you recall at the time that the vehicle was passing, you don't recall getting a license plate?
At this time, I do not recall the license plate, but after I shot at the vehicle, I then responded up Main Street and started triaging victims. And after doing that, I met with officers, and because I couldn't get on the radio and give out as much information as I wanted to. So when I spoke with other officers, that's when I explained to them that I was the one that had shot. It was not a suspect shooting, it was me. And that the vehicle in question was a red Ford Escape. And I believe I was talking to Detective Casey Specialist Moss, and I believe there might have been another officer there as well. And I must have provided a license plate to Detective Casey during that debrief on scene. I did not know about that until about 2 days later when I gave my statement to Detective Kirby and Detective Casey, because that is when I was informed by Detective Casey that I had actually provided him a correct license plate, but I don't remember that.
Because it's traumatic even to him. Look at his face. Oh my gosh. Darryl. I could halfway see if these questions were providing any semblance of a defense. I could see asking the questions. If it were an attorney, none of this would be like this. They wouldn't be asking these stupid, self-serving, narcissistic, ridiculous questions, and none of this soft-sit trash. But because we are subjected to the demon with the horns here and the island of Goblin, he just can't stop himself because it's about, somebody trying to, potentially hurt him. And he lied about being hurt anyway. Yeah, they slammed me on the ground. I can't wait to get to that.
Any reason why you didn't mention the license plate in your report?
Because, like I stated, I don't remember it.
He then went to go help people, and it was so devastating. He couldn't believe how bad it was.
So it'd be fair to say if you don't remember it, then it's a possibility that you didn't get the license plate.
No, not a possibility. Because somebody else hurt him.
I would say that if Detective Casey is telling me that I told him on scene during a traumatic incident that I provided him the license plate of the vehicle, I'd have to believe that Detective Casey is correct. There's many things that you do not remember during a traumatic incident, and I believe that's because your brain prevents you from remembering everything.
So you would describe it as a traumatic incident that you do recall using deadly force and recalling what you was aiming for, but not
That's what made it true.
the license plates or anything else like that.
That is correct.
Would it be fair to say that because you describe it as a traumatic event, that there was a lot of things that you probably don't recall about the incident?
I would agree with that. I would think that there's a lot of things when I started going up West Main Street and started seeing the absolute destruction. I know there's things that I did and saw that I don't really remember, and I don't really want to remember.
Will one of those possibly be the suspect that you keep naming?
Nope.
No.
Thank you. Very good, very good. I'm loving this guy.
And how did you come to the knowledge of the make and model of the vehicle when on the exhibit that was shown, you only had interaction with it for a few seconds? How were you able to make out the make and the model of the vehicle?
Because that vehicle model has been out for quite some time, and I'm halfway decent with vehicles, and I readily recognize that it was a Ford Escape.
So you've seen many Ford Escapes?
Yes.
And you said the model has been out for some time, so what do you mean by that? Do you mean
It's
was an older
2022
model?
now,
Do you mean-
and that Ford model was approximately a 2008-ish to maybe a 2011, 2010-ish. So, yeah, they've been out for over a decade.
And how did you come to that knowledge of the estimate of the years that the model could have been? Would you agree that that's pretty difficult to know just off the bat?
No.
Would that be fair to say?
No.
So it would be pretty easy to tell the make and model in year of a vehicle just by looking at it.
That is correct.
So it'd be fair to say if someone had a vehicle right here in front of you, you'd be able to tell just by looking at it for a couple of seconds the make, the model, and the year.
Depending on what vehicle it is, yeah, quite likely.
Models of vehicles, okay, so even lately, that's even worse. Models of vehicles for like several years are pretty much the same shape. Okay, so like I owned Mustangs. Okay, in the 80s, you had that boxy foxy style. Coming up to the late 90s, there was that more sleek style where 2/3 of the car was in front of you and 1/3 of the car was behind you, so that when you spun out like this. Then you got to the more of a you know, I don't know, I almost called it a grandpa style car. Even the fastbacks weren't as sleek as they were in the 60s. But there's definitely 4 or 5 years of groupings of these vehicles. And yes, a lot of people, especially vehicles that they can identify, but police officers see this stuff all the time.
Decent with vehicles.
What do you mean by decent?
I can recognize many vehicles that are manufactured. Part of being a police officer is dealing with vehicles. We run a lot of vehicle registration plates. So when you match the registration to a vehicle on a response, you become very well accustomed to the many different vehicles that are manufactured.
Did you at any time see the registration of the vehicle that passed you?
Like I stated previous, I debriefed with Detective Casey during the incident, and he stated that I gave him a registration number, a registration plate for it. I do not recall giving him that registration plate, but Detective Casey informed me that I provided him a correct license plate for that vehicle.
Would it be fair to say that a registration kit would it be fair to say that that automatically links to the make and model and year of the car? Would it be fair to say that? That if you rent, or if we're judging by the license plates, we're conducting a stop, and to do that you will have to run the license plates. Would it be fair to say that all that information would come up in your computer when you run the license plate? That'd be fair to say?
What are you asking?
You had a lot of questions right there. So
okay, let me back up then. So if you were conducting a traffic stop,
okay,
and you pulled up the license plates of the vehicle that you were stopping,
okay,
would the information registered to that vehicle show in your computer?
Yes.
If the license plate is actually accurate and current to that actual vehicle, yes.
Thank you.
Just so we're clear, the information would come up though.
That is correct. It should, as long as the system is working.
Information for that plate will come up.
And did you have a system or any equipment that could have assisted you in learning the make and the model and year of the vehicle at the time of the incident?
No, I was on foot with no other equipment.
His experience.
So is it fair to say that you did not know that information until later when you were told by Detective Casey or another detective?
No, because like I previously stated, I can recognize vehicles pretty well, and I knew it was a Ford Escape, and I knew the approximate year of it.
You did testify that, and you can also see from the exhibit video, that the front end of the vehicle was damaged. Would that be fair to say?
That is correct.
And you can still make out the make and model and year of the vehicle with extensive damage.
That is correct.
Could you see the emblem of the vehicle at that point?
I don't recall if I saw an emblem or not. I know the body style of the vehicle, and I knew it was a Ford Escape.
Would it be fair to say that many SUVs have the same type of body build?
I'm sure some vehicles do look similar.
So that would it be fair to say that there's a possibility that you could not make out the make and model and year of the vehicle, especially with it being extensively damaged to the front?
No, I was confident that it was a Ford Escape.
Did you notice any tents on that vehicle?
The front windshield that I looked through, I know was not tinted, or it was not tinted enough to not make me recognize you.
Did you see any tents on the side of the vehicle?
Not that I recall. And if they were, they weren't that dark.
You don't recall, though, for sure, if there were any tents to any windows of the vehicle you saw?
Well, all windows are tinted to some extent. It just depends on to what percentage of tint that they come with. So I'm sure there is tint on the windows because vehicles come from the factory with some level of window tint. So I guess to your question, was there any window tint? I'm sure there was, but not to a degree that would prevent me from seeing who was driving it.
Explain what you mean by tint percentage.
So there's different varying degrees of tint that you can put on vehicles.
Can you elaborate for the jury?
And for me,
Rounds.
I'll overrule the objection. Mr. Brooks, please ask your question again.
You stated that all cars come from the manufacturer with some level of tint, but you made a reference to percentage.
Correct.
Can you elaborate on
I'll overrule the objection.
it went back.
Mr. Brooks, please ask your question again.
You stated that all cars come from the manufacturer with some level of tint, but you made a reference to percentage.
Correct.
Can you elaborate on percentage? What would constitute a darker tint versus a lighter tint?
Well, you've asked two questions now, so which one do you want him to answer first?
The last one, I'm sorry.
So you're asking about lighter
About the tint
versus
percentage.
darker.
About the tint percentage.
So like a
Okay.
50% tint would be a lighter tint than like a 35% tint.
So the lower.
The lower the percentage, the less you can see through. So a 35% tint would be the lowest percentage that's legal in most states. And every state is a little different. That's the percentage that you can still see through. So if somebody has like a 10% tint, you can hardly see through it at all.
The percentage, the darker the tint.
That is correct.
Okay.
Daryl didn't know that.
You stated that you're pretty decent with making out make and model and years of vehicles based on your line of work. Would that be fair to say?
That is correct.
Would you know of the make and model of the vehicle that you saw that day? Would you know if those model vehicles come from the manufacturer with any tint?
To be honest with you, I don't work for Ford, so I don't know if they come with tint, but I would assume as most vehicles, when they come from the factory, they come with some sort of tint. I believe usually the front is approximately 50% tint and the rears are usually, I think, 25 or 30 or something like that.
So from your knowledge, the backer windows are usually
Backer.
coming from the manufacturer, maybe a little bit darker than the front.
Correct.
No further questions.
Very briefly, thank you. So the barricades that we saw at the intersection where you were posted, those have been blown over by the wind?
Yes, so when I deployed the barricades initially, standing upright, they kept on blowing directly like right off the street. So I tipped them down on their sides so they wouldn't, I guess, catch as much wind and they wouldn't blow all over the place.
Did those barricades appear to slow down the SUV as it drove through them?
Objection, speculation.
Speculation.
Overruled, he may answer, given all of the cross.
No, it did not slow the vehicle down at all.
You discharged your firearm 3 times toward the vehicle?
That is correct.
Did all 3 rounds strike the vehicle?
Yes, they did.
Can we please put up for the jury exhibit number 3, which has previously been published?
Go ahead.
We're going to start at the 2-minute and 59-second mark if we can, and while we're working on that, can we please clear the screen now? Thank you.
What exhibit is that?
3. We're at the 2:58-second mark on this exhibit number 3. Do you see a vehicle on the screen?
Yes, I do.
Does that appear to be the same color of vehicle you saw drive through the intersection where you were posted?
Yes.
Let's play from this second, please. Pause. We paused at 3:02. Does that appear to be the same make and model as the SUV you saw driving through the intersection?
Objection.
Overruled.
It's clear.
Yes, it does.
What's the
Is there a difference between this vehicle and the vehicle you saw at your intersection?
damage?
The difference in the vehicle is that there's no damage on this one.
Okay, let's play again from this point.
Dip pusher. And then once the man comes in, does he back away and he runs away like a little chicken? God, Susan Oppa was so right about that. She was so right on.
Pause. Paused at 3 minutes and 47 seconds. Did you see a person wearing a gray hooded sweatshirt in that clip?
Yes, I did.
Was the appearance of that person and their clothing consistent with the person you saw driving the SUV through your intersection?
Objection, speculation, 2 different incidents.
Overruled, the witness may answer.
He's right. It's 2
Yes.
different incidents.
Can we please put up for everybody exhibit number 120, which has previously been received and published?
Go ahead.
Okay. You see the photograph on the screen in front of you?
Yes, I do.
Does that appear to be a vehicle consistent with the one you saw driving through your intersection?
Yes.
And the person seated in the driver's seat, does that look like the same person you saw driving that red SUV?
Yes.
We put up for everybody, please, exhibit number 9.
Oh, he's
Go
really
ahead.
tying this up with a bow.
You see the photograph on the screen in front of you?
Yes.
Oh,
Does that
look at that. They are tying this up with a
appear
bow.
to be the same vehicle that you saw driving through the intersection of Wisconsin and Maine?
Objection, hearsay.
Overruled, the witness may answer.
Yes.
Does that appear to be the same driver of that same vehicle?
Objection, hearsay.
Overruled, the witness may answer.
Yes.
Will you please put up for everybody exhibit number 169, which has previously been published?
Go ahead.
Objection, relevancy.
Overruled.
See the photograph on the screen in front
See
of
how
you?
bad it is.
Yes.
Does that appear to be the same vehicle that you saw drive through the intersection of Wisconsin and Maine?
Yes.
And that's the same, and you can still see him so clearly.
Does that appear to be the same driver?
Yes.
What's going on with that front passenger window?
It looks
Objection,
like
leading.
Overruled, the witness may answer.
it looks like it's rolled down.
So if someone had, before this incident, painted that window black, covered it in a black paper bag, and taped it up with duct tape, and then rolled the window down, would that have prevented you from seeing through the front passenger window?
Objection, speculation.
No.
Overruled, the witness may answer.
Who was the person depicted in exhibits number 120,
He's
number
laughing.
9, and number 169?
Durhell Brooks.
Thank you.
Objection, I do not consent to being called that name.
The objection is noted, however, the jury is
You already-
advised to disregard as it's not testimony.
Don't call
It's a
me
comment.
names.
All right, thank you, sir. You may step down,
Okay, all right.
and I appreciate the.
We made it through this one too. Okay, well that was a tough one. Bryce, they really tied it up with a bow on that one, didn't they? Like, subscribe, and I will see you next time.